What is up, making move, folks? I hope you guys are off to a great start this week and closing out a very busy January. Um, hey, if you guys have seen any of my posts recently, I have been harping on the fact that we are almost done with January, and you know, hopefully your goals are going and you're making progress on them. Um, but that's not why we're here to chat today. So today, I wanted to talk about biting off more than you can chew. Um, and what I mean by that is maybe scaling too big too fast. Tim and I have had some episodes where we talked about the scale that we build and things we've done, and how we have scaled, and sometimes, quite frankly, eating my own dog food here, we've probably scaled a little too fast in some cases as well. Um, but one of the things that I see a lot of guys do, and I've literally sat on at tables with some pretty big operators and some guys that have major goals. They preach BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goals, and and I tend to agree with that, right? Like I'm a big fan of when you get into whatever you're doing. Let's just say multifamily for experience. I'm a huge fan of walking in and saying, I'm going to own 1,000 units one day. Now, I'd like you to have a little more, you know, reasoning behind that 1,000 units. I'd hate to see you just go buy 1,000 units just for the sake of owning 1,000 units. Um, but you get the point, right? Like, don't walk in and say, I want to own 10 units. I'd love to see folks striving for 1,000 units to build some big portfolio and, across 6 states and I don't know, own a plane, man. Whatever floats your boat, right? Like there's no reason that, Grant Cardone can be the only guy flying around in a plane with his initials on it. I hope you're striving that far. But my point is when you're just starting out, um, there's this idea that, you know, more scale, more opportunity. I completely agree. There was a really good post today. I was checking something out, and there was a really good post today. I think it was Cole Baker. So props to Cole. He broke it down by, hey, I increased revenue, I increased rent by $147, and I increased monthly income by, I don't know, something like 14,000, right? And he said, now multiply that by 24, you know, by 24 units times 14,000. And all of a sudden you've created massive value on a property. And I agree with that. That's exactly what we do. It's exactly why I got out of the single family space. Increasing my rent $100 a month really didn't add much value to my house, or the houses I was renting. Um, but in the multifamily space, if I increase my rent on one unit by $100, and then I do it for the other 29 units on a 30-unit property, that's pretty big. In fact, let's do the math right here while we're sitting here. So, you know, 30 units, 1,200 a year, 100 a month per unit times 30 units, $36,000 in income. You know, let's even be, horribly conservative and divide that by half and assume a 50% expense ratio. Um, so that's 18,000 a year on the NOI line. Let's say you're in a 6 cap market. That's $300,000 in value, right? Just by increasing rent $100 across 30 units. So scale is real, but I want to talk about something else. Scale also works the other way. You can also go too big too fast or not have enough experience to go big, and and scale can magnify your mistakes as well. And that's one of the things I wanted to kind of chat about today, because I want you to have big goals, but I want you to take steps to get there. I don't want you to go out and buy a 150 unit property for your first property. Not unless you've got a partner alongside of you who's got experience doing something around that size. And here's why. Let's say you go in there and you think, I can do these at 6,500 a unit. I'm gonna renovate these units at 6,500 a unit. And then you realize, oh no, I was wrong. I really need 8,500 a unit or 9,000 a unit. Let's just say you missed it by $2,000 times 140 units. Do that math. That's a very, very hard gap to make up for someone, as opposed to, let's say you bought a 10 unit property and you made that same mistake, right? Okay. So now you've got a $20,000 gap. Not painless. It's not painless. It's certainly going to take a bite, but you can probably figure out how to make up 20 grand. You can probably find it somewhere under the couch cushions, maybe in underneath the seats of your car. A little bit of a joke, bad one maybe. But at the end of the day, you can probably make that up. You can figure that out. If you do that on a big property, um, that's going to be tough. Finding 200,000, 500,000, $1 million extra, that starts to get tough. And we've seen a lot of that over the last year to 18 months, right? We've seen instances where guys have, you just not done the things they needed to do. And I chalk a lot of it up to inexperience because you look back and you see, oh man, these guys scaled up to 2,500, 3,000 units in 12 months, 18 months, 2 years before ever having any experience at all in the space. All of a sudden they find themselves behind the eight ball. They're they're undercapitalized. They don't have the money to go do it. And then their only choice is to turn in the keys because guess what? In 2023, the bailout effect of the market was gone. And what I mean by that is like in 2021 and 2022, if you grossly miscalculated your renovation budget or what you needed to do a property or carry out a business plan, there was a good chance you could just probably put that damn thing on the market and make a little money. Maybe you didn't 2x your money, but pretty quickly, you made 15, 20, 30%. And that wasn't unheard of for doing nothing more than, buying a property at the right time when the market was hot and everybody wanted to get in on it. That stopped happening in 2023, right? Like it was really hard to put a property on the market and just make money because you had a property. Um, and guys who had under budgeted, their mistakes were magnified, right? That scale really bit them. Maybe, and I'm not going to say it would have kept it from happening, but maybe if they'd had a little more experience with the 10, 15, 20 unit properties and really cut their teeth there, then maybe they don't have that problem. And unfortunately, guys, like when we're doing syndications, the people that really pay for that are our investors. There's no two ways about that. Unless you're coming in with your own capital out of your own pocket without doing a capital call back to the investors, the guys that really pay for it, the folks that really pay for it are our investors. And, we really owe it to folks to kind of make sure that we have the right team around us or the right experience within our own, skill set to get these things done. So I really want to kind of encourage folks as you're getting into this thing, really think hard about why you're going after a 100 unit property because that's the popular thing, right? And hey, I was guilty of it too. I spent my first 4 6 months looking for 100+ unit properties. I can't tell you how many brokers I called, and I was like, I want 100+ units, value add, looking for a 6 cap, that kind of thing. And I had some presented to me. In fact, my first property that I almost bought, I was very, very close to buying, was like a 246, 262 unit property in Greenville, South Carolina. May have been 228, but anyway, way bigger than I had any business buying. But I did have a partner, alongside me who had multiple years of experience doing much larger properties than I had. But I probably was in over my head, even without, him alongside me to guide me. It's probably a blessing in disguise that I did not get that. Even though I've seen what it resold for, and wow, that would have been a game changer. But anyway, guys, I digress. So my whole point is start small. Baby steps. I got to give Dennis Polson some credit this morning. He and I were texting back and forth. and we had a conversation about breaking down big goals, right? Like big goals are really hard to digest, so break them down into smaller steps that you can digest. Same thing with doing multifamily deals, man. Like go after 100 units, but do it a year and a half from now after you've done a couple of tens, a 20, a 50 unit property. And then scale up that way. Really cut your teeth kind of on some smaller places where the mistakes aren't magnified. Um, I hope that makes some sense. The other one that I kind of wanted to talk about, and I made a post today about this because I've seen a couple of guys post about it. Tim Bratz posted a property he was selling, and he was very, very clear. Hey guys, I'm selling this. It's a really good deal, not for a first timer, right? And I'm glad. Props to Bratz for calling that out, right? Like a lot of guys would have just tried to offload something. So props to him for calling that out. Um, and I know this guy elicits a lot of emotional responses, but Cardone, I saw something. He was posting a video recently, and he did the same thing. He was going around talking about a property, and he was like, This is not a first timers deal, right? It had heavy value add, heavy renovation, um, and so you know I've seen some of that as well, right? I recently was at a property, and even with the amount of experience I have, some of the full gut renovations I've done, I was walking the property and I was looking at it. I was like, man, I don't know that I want to take this on, right? I don't know that I really have the capacity, the bandwidth, the desire. I mean, and believe me, guys, like this was a home run deal for someone that really wanted to take it on. I mean, it was trashed. There were leaves everywhere. There was crap all over the place. It was it was truly, sorry about this. It was truly, a full gut job. But the price was like 400 grand. The thing was probably going to be worth somewhere between 2.8 and 3 million when you're done. And you would have been all in, uh, roughly you would have been all in for about 1.1. And you probably could, if you know what you're doing, you probably could have finished that thing out in about a year. Um, and it's a great property. Not for a first timer though. There were so many places on that property to trip, not just mentioning the foundation cracks. There were literally foundations that were like here and here, right next to each other. There were some major issues on this property, and with enough reserves, you could probably make it through it. But there were a lot of hidden places to trip up on that property that would have made most folks without the right experience fail. Um, and so you walk on it and you look at that and you go, man, there's opportunity. I see tons of equity here. I see a lot of potential. But it goes the other way too. I see a lot of potential here for easily failing. And I don't want you to be afraid of failing, but I want you to be smart about it, right? So you walk on that property, you've never flipped a house, you've never done a full gut renovation job, just walk away. And don't take that bad boy on. Or go find a partner who has that experience. Go to them, go to someone, like a Nate Barger or Mike Ely and be like, hey guys, I got a great opportunity. I can get this thing, but I need your help. And then be willing to really, lay whatever out to get them to come on board with you, because you're going to need that person in your back pocket helping you along the way. So, that's one of the things I really kind of want folks to kind of, sit down and really, really think about is the time, the energy, the unknowns that come along with these like real value add deals. Um, and and realize that folks that have been doing this a long, long time still trip up, but they tend to know what to spot so that their trip ups don't cost them hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a $10 or $15,000 mistake, right? Um, they don't miss the big ticket items that could really, really sink a deal. Not catching a couple of floor joists that have some water damage. We can figure that out, right? Not catching a line, plumbing line, or whatever, we can probably figure that out. you know Missing the fact that the property's got aluminum on it, in terms of wiring, that's a big problem, right? That's one that could really trip you up. Um, so, got somebody on Facebook here. What are we saying? What I have learned from my investing my own money is that you have to be able to handle those payments out of your own pocket when and if hard times come. I completely agree with you, right? Like, and that's that's kind of what we were talking about earlier with, if you do that on a 10 unit property, we can all probably figure out 20, 25 grand if push comes to shove. But doing that on a 100 unit property, right, where it's 250, 300, $400,000, that becomes a lot harder to figure out, right? I don't know about you, but I don't really have $250,000 to make up a mistake, right? That would really set me back. So I don't know where you guys figure in that equation, but that would hurt. We would certainly not be doing many family vacations for a while if I hit that one. Um, so I that's just one of the things I want everybody to sit down and think about for a second, because and I'm not dogging on any mentorship groups, right? Because I really, really like the fact that people push you, that people say, don't think small, don't think small, think big. Just be, smart about how you get to big, right? Don't go from zero to humongous in 6 months, right? With zero experience. Go from 0 to 15 units in 2 months, get that one done, cut your teeth on it, learn all the missteps on that bad boy, sell it, move on to something a little bit bigger. That's and because and quite honestly, guys, like this is no different than like the fix and flip world. I mean, if there's any flippers out there, tell me, raise your hand, chime in here, give me a comment. How many flippers out there have never made a misstep on a flip, right? And I would bet you that almost every one of them would raise their hand and say, "Oh yeah, like I've had some missteps, right? I've underestimated this, I underestimated that. I missed that big crack in the foundation." That's that happens, right? But if you're flipping, it's a house, right? It's one house. You can figure that out. You can probably, call in sick, schedule a little bit of PTO, show up with your hammer and say, "How can I help?" And it's one unit, it's one house, right? Like you can figure that out. But still, it happens. And these things that we get into, they can be real problems if we haven't scaled correctly. And one of the things that I would yeah, agree, Dennis, man, something does always pop up. I even give you a little experience from one of my own properties that I had. We took on a pretty big renovation job, and one of the things that we got into was as we started to pull back the roofs, started to replace the roofs. Basically, we thought, hey, we're going to pull up some plywood, put some new shingles down. We get in there and we realized that a lot of those roofs weren't done correctly, right? They were never done correctly when they were built, so we had to go back and like redo those things. Over almost 100 of them, and that costs money, guys. And fortunately, we had enough experience that we built in those reserves. But that was something that was missed. Regardless of the fact that between the partnership team, we probably had a combined 45, almost 50 years of experience with renovation projects. And we had a licensed general contractor on the partnership team. It was missed. And it was an expensive miss. Now, fortunately, from, like I said, from the experience standpoint, we knew to build in enough reserves. So we were able to make it work and get it done. But that happens. And because it wasn't just one unit, it was almost 100. That was expensive, right? It scaled really, really quickly in the wrong way. Um, but I think there's something to be said for, looking at those 10, 15, 20 unit properties, grab a JV partner, grab a couple of partners and do those deals. And then two, sometimes, one of the things I really like about some of these smaller properties is that they're small enough that it forces you to be way more engaged, right? Like it's real easy to buy 100 units, 150 units, and let a third party handle that, and hand that off and let a third party, and you basically play project manager over here on the side. And hopefully a lot of you get to that point, right? Because that's where you want to be. We don't want to create a job for ourselves, right? We want to put systems and processes in place and be able to hire the people to do a lot of this stuff for us. But sometimes you got to roll up your sleeves and get things done. And I think a smaller property sometimes forces you to do that because it just doesn't have the scale where you can say, hey, I'm going to go hire a soup to nuts project manager, GC, all this other stuff, and I'm just going to let them handle it and send me weekly reports. Um, so I think having a property like that that forces you to engage, forces you to be way more involved. Um, I think it's I think it's huge. Me personally, knowing knowing what type of pipe plumbing is what, when a GC asks you about it later on down the road, that's a good thing. Being able to walk on a property and say, nope, that's aluminum, not copper. Which, by the way, is easy to spot, guys. You just got to know what to look for. And then, being able to walk on a property and as you're walking through, being able to say, hey, a floor shouldn't feel like that. Something's going on under this brand new flooring that somebody put down. And by the way, I have seen that more times than you can imagine. In fact, we had a recent renovation of our own where we were doing a walkthrough after the GC had finished, I think like 4 or 5 units. And almost every one of the units that they had done flooring in, we're walking through there and we're like, this doesn't feel right. Rip this flooring up. Sure enough, you rip it up. Subfloors weren't replaced like they were supposed to be, things like that. So, having that kind of experience where you can literally just walk on something and be like, no, is huge. Um, and Christina, you are so spot on. Because one of my favorite days is trash day, trash out day, like when you're just trashing and ripping things out and getting rid of cabinets and stuff like that. It's also one of my scariest days is when we start knocking holes in walls because I'm like, man, I don't know what we're getting ready to find. You think you you think you've done all your due diligence. You think you've looked under every sink and every counter and all that good stuff. And next thing you know, you knock a hole in the wall and you open up a whole can of worms, literally. Who knows what you're uncovering at that point. Um, and guys, just uh, you know, uh, I just want to encourage you to get out there, set big goals, but break them down into smaller steps, right? So that's really all I got this week. I hope everybody's doing well. If you guys want to, connect with us, check us out in the Making Moves Facebook group, or just reach out to Tim and I directly. Tim's still out for a little bit longer. Wishing him and his wife well. In case you guys don't know, they had a wonderful little baby girl. But again, we're going to wait for Tim to come back and share that story with everybody. So anyway, guys, if you have any comments, throw them in here in the last second. We'll get to them. And hey, here's one right here. Thanks, Christina, for playing along. I think whoever that wants to jump to big stuff has to have a team, subs and stuff. I could not agree more. As Vitaly and I have scaled, we have absolutely put a team around us. We would not be able to do what we do without that team. Big shout out to Crystal, our regional property manager. She has been critical, absolutely critical as we've scaled over the last year, and will become even more critical. So big shout out to Crystal. And then some of our partners, Dennis, Nicole, really Keisha, really appreciate you guys. So, please folks, take Christina's advice there as you're scaling, as you're getting into bigger stuff. I would encourage you, even as you're doing the 20, 25, 30 unit properties, get that team in place, start making those connections, right? Figure out who those GCs are that you want to move on to bigger things and start to scale, start small, go big. All right, guys, that is it for this week. Next week, I think we're going to have Dennis Paulson on. So tune in for that one. And we will see you next week, guys. Get out there and make some moves. Take care.